is about 3,000. But that includes a lot of people who come on Christmas and Easter. On a typical Sunday, this might be a small crowd on a typical Sunday. So we probably have somewhere between 600 or so on a typical Sunday. I'm just going to say a word that we're waiting a few minutes here because of traffic and things like that.
And Randy says many who are coming to attend, Arabs.
Yes, I'll say we'll do this on Arab time. Oh yeah, there's still people outside. Good evening, friends. If I can have your attention for just one moment, let me start by thanking you for coming, first of all, and by introducing myself. My name is Randall Hein Lamb. I am one of the co-chairs of what we refer to as the Middle East Ministry here at All Saints Church. It is one of our peace and justice ministries here at the church, and our focus is specifically on issues of Israel and Palestine, but also of the larger, what we sometimes refer to as SWANA region, Southwest Asia and North Africa. So I'm going to welcome you on behalf of the church, but I'm also going to let you know here that we're going to take a few minutes extra time before we actually begin the program. I'm a firm believer in honoring the faithfulness of people who do arrive on time, but I also recognize that we are in Los Angeles on a Friday evening, and some people are still on their way. Also, I am made aware by our speaker that there is such a thing called Arab time. And I judge from your comments that you all understand what we mean by that. When you say something is going to start at 7, that means it's okay to start at 7:30. We're not going to wait quite that long, but I just wanted to let you know that we are going to wait a few minutes for people to come. Thank you very much for that comment. And I just want to point out, too, for anyone who needs to use facilities, there are two options here. There is a single bathroom that if you walk down this aisle to the right, there is a single bathroom there back by the area where we have communion, all of the things for communion. And then there's also if you go out of the church to this side and go into the main building where the two doors are, there is a bathroom, a men's and women's bathroom over on in that building as well, right by the stairwell. You're welcome to use those at any time, and we'll be getting started in just a moment or two. So you can go back to your conversations for about 5 minutes. Thank you. Sorry? Palestinian time, 5 minutes American time. Good evening once again. We're about to get started with our program. I'm glad that there are so many happy conversations going on here. And thank you very much for attending again here tonight. As I said before, my name is Randall Hein Lamb. I am a member here at All Saints Church and the co-chair of the Middle East Ministry, one of our peace and justice ministries here at the church. My wife, Doni, is also my co-chair, and she's out there at the tables, so she'll be joining us here shortly. And I want to thank all the members of our Middle East Ministry leadership team and others who have volunteered to help bring about this event here tonight. One of the things that we frequently do here at All Saints is what we call a land acknowledgment. And this is more than just a pro forma type of thing we do, but because today we are going to be discussing topics of displacement, occupation, and settler colonialism as experienced by the indigenous peoples of the lands of our Holy One. At all times, but especially in our discussion when we address these topics, we would be remiss not to confess our own history and complicity in a very similar pattern and model of displacement, occupation, and colonialism. And we ought to be engaged in an active process to seek repentance, forgiveness, and redress and reconciliation with the first peoples of this land. To that end, we acknowledge that the land we are having this meeting on tonight is sacred to the Tongva Kij people, its original caretakers. It is sacred to us, guests upon the land. In all that we do upon this land, may we treat it with respect and honor. In our stewardship of this land, may we learn from the faithful example of the Tongva people and partner with them in its use and care. Together, may we make this land a place of love, justice, and peace. August is an especially poignant month for Native Americans here in California because in 1852, how many years ago is that? Quite a while. In 1852, a man named Ishi walked out of the wilderness, the last survivor of the brutal genocide that occurred to Native peoples here in California, or one of the last survivors in Northern California. Today is also a very poignant day because, of course, it is the anniversary of the second atomic bomb that destroyed Nagasaki in Japan at the end of World War II. A bomb that, at least in my opinion, need not have been dropped because the Japanese people were already moving towards surrender, but was done for political purposes as a warning to the Soviets, our erstwhile allies, but also Cold War enemies as it would develop, and a bomb that was also meant as revenge against the Japanese people. So we have that event here tonight. And then in more recent times, we also have the fact that this is the anniversary of the murder of someone by the name of Mike Brown in Ferguson, California, 10 years ago today. And so we remember these people, and we remember them in relation also to what we're going to be discussing tonight about the occupation, displacement, and genocide of peoples in Israel and Palestine. I've probably talked enough here, but I wanted just to set the stage here for our discussion here tonight. Once again, I'm going to introduce to you Mr. Joe Rose, or Reverend Joe Rose, I should say. Joe is my co-chair for the LA and Orange County chapter of FOSNA, Friends of Sabile North America, and he's going to be telling you just a brief word or two about that organization before introducing our special speaker of the evening. Joe?
I have the privilege of being a member of the board of Friends of Sabile North America, sponsors of the tour that is bringing us tonight the Reverend Dr. Munther Isaac. We think his voice is a critical voice to be heard by the churches in North America. And so we've brought him to 8 or 9 cities, of which he's about halfway through here tonight in Pasadena. I want to encourage you, if you want to know more about Friends of Sabeel North America, you have a brochure in your hand to look at later, and I encourage you to maybe join us. And also, our executive, Jonathan Katab, has written a book on his view of the solution, the one-state solution for peace in Israel-Palestine. We'll have those books out in just a few minutes. So join me now in welcoming the Reverend Dr. Munther Isaac.
Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you. I truly appreciate it. Thank you, and thank you to the Friends of Sabeel. Thank you for All Saints Episcopal Church. Thank you for everyone who put this event together, and thank you for all of you for coming. I would like to begin by quoting the words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mountain, easily my favorite passage in Scripture. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for justice, for they shall be satisfied." Jesus also said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." I hope that we come here with this promise in mind and with this thirst and hunger for justice and righteousness. For let me be honest, I wish I was here in different circumstances. I wish I didn't have to do this tour. It's so heartbreaking to continue to call for a ceasefire 10 months after the genocide begins. It is so heartbreaking. How many more need to die before the world decides enough is enough? How many more images of children pulled from under the rubble do we need to share until the world humanizes the people of Gaza? Because this is what it seems we're doing. It's not just that we're calling for a ceasefire. We're calling for the world to see the people and children of Gaza as humans. It is so heartbreaking and troubling, given that we've been doing this, as I said, for 10 months of the whole world watching what's happening in Gaza, as if life. You know, this is the kind of genocide. This is not the kind of genocide in which we will discover the horrors after it happens. We're watching it live. And it's both those who are committing it and the victims themselves who are showing it. And you know how heartbreaking it is to see the courage of the people of Gaza pleading with the world to stop this, sacrificing everything 10 months later to continue to show what's happening. And yet we're still debating and deliberating and negotiating. So it feels what we're doing, not just calling for a ceasefire, but challenging the humanity. And the hard part right now is that it seems we are still far from the end. A genocide has been normalized. We got used to the idea of our phone ringing, breaking news, 100 killed in a strike, 50 killed in a strike. And that became just daily occurrence. Yet despite that, we cannot stop pleading, working, fighting for justice. We cannot stop, and we should not stop talking about Gaza. If we stop talking about Gaza, not just we normalize the genocide, if we stop talking about Gaza, we surrender to the notion that evil ultimately wins and that we can do nothing to help people in need. And I refuse to live in a world like this. It is indeed our collective humanity that is at stake, and that's why we cannot accept the reality as it is, and that's why we should not stop talking about Gaza, and this is why I'm here tonight. We must continue. We must continue because we owe it to them. We owe it to their sacrifices, to their courage. We owe it to the honorable people of Gaza. But I'm also here with a message precisely to the American people and to the American church. First, that this war did not start on October 7th. It's important to continue to say this. We have to address the root causes of this reality. Why is it that the whole world purposely, it seems, ignores the context and ignores 76 years of oppression? How did we get here is so important to deal with. Isolating October 7th, and it was horrific, but isolating it is done on purpose to make this a war or a religious war that began on October 7th. For 76 years, we've been pleading for justice. This war not only began in 1948, as we've been saying, but I believe this war even began, as a good friend of mine said, a theologian from Gaza by the name of Yusuf Khouri, who said this war began with the phrase, a land without people. This is when we were first erased. They looked at our land and they did not see people of same worth. They can be disposed. In 1948, when Israel was created, friends, it was not created on an empty land. 800,000 Palestinians were forced out, were expelled, were ethnically cleansed from Palestine for Israel to become a state. Don't you think that's an important component in the story? Why is the Western media continuously ignoring the fact that 80% of the people of Gaza are Nakba survivors? Why aren't we talking about the real issues that led to October 7th? Why is the international law always ignored when it comes to Palestine? I want to look at those laws. Is there a footnote that it does not apply on us? We're really beginning to question that. Why is no one talking about the reality of apartheid in Palestine? And I want to address the church in particular. Why isn't the church concerned that there is apartheid in Palestine? How many more reports we need to publish? Numerous human rights organizations and legal organizations have published reports showing with detail that there is apartheid in Palestine. Yet we continue to debate and they tell us it's not helpful to use that word. Apartheid is a crime. If there is apartheid, we must call it out. We can't continue to ignore it. And I'm really shocked that these human rights abuses continue to be just okay with the international community. Why isn't the church talking about apartheid in Palestine? It's something that I cannot really understand. We celebrate human rights, international law, and then when Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International and even Israeli Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem and Yeshdin and many others, many new UN reports, say it is apartheid, and I ask, where is the church? Why aren't we appalled? Haven't we learned from South Africa? By the way, I love how we're an Episcopalian church. I love how someone like Desmond Tutu is celebrated all over the world, right? As a man of courage and integrity, with the exception of when he talks about Palestine. When he says there is apartheid in Palestine, no one listens to him. Why? Seriously, are we less humans? This is the question that we as Palestinians are convinced of, that the world does not see us as fully human. The whole world stopped when October 7th happened, and everyone is talking about those kidnapped. And believe me, I want to see everyone released. No one should be happy about children kidnapped or families kidnapped from their homes. I hope we all agree about this. Yet why is no one talking about the 9,000 Palestinians kidnapped after October 7th? Are they less human? They're kidnapped, tortured, they suffer hunger, they're raped, and the world is silent. I haven't seen anybody waging war and destroying Tel Aviv to release those kidnapped. Again, are we less human? And by the way, they include children. For years, children have been kidnapped by Israelis. And by the way, you know how they can get away with it? They call them terrorists and then they are arrested. That's it. That's the power of empire. They control the terminology, they control the terms, they decide who's good and who's bad, and because they're Palestinians, they are arrested. Even though they don't have any charges sometimes, no lawyers, no charges, no trial, administrative detention. Where is the world from this? Why isn't anybody talking about it? What needs to happen until Palestinians are fully humanized? That's why we're beginning to wonder, is there a footnote in the Human Rights Watch, in the human rights books that says with the exception of Palestinians? Even look at this war. Hospitals were destroyed, churches, mosques were attacked, schools, universities were destroyed. And we ask, does the international law matter anymore? That's why I will continue to say, I don't want any European or American to lecture us on the international law or human rights anymore as Palestinians. And we're really, really appalled by the double standards. They have no shame when it comes to the amount of hypocrisy expressed in this war. We've been told and lectured and preached about Israel's sacred right to defend itself. And we ask, do we have the right to defend ourselves? Do Palestinians have the right to defend themselves? And I say this as someone who truly and honestly, I believe in nonviolent creative resistance. I don't believe in violence. But with that said, why is it that when Palestinians defend themselves, they're called terrorists? When Israel defends itself, as they tell us, it's democracy. Why is one violence treated in one way and another violence treated in another way? Do we have the right to defend our land? And please understand, when Palestinians say this is our land, this is something important. I'm not making a political statement when I say this is our land. This is land we've inherited and farmed and took care of for generation upon generation upon generation upon generation. This is what we mean when we say this is our land. Yet, as I said, there is so much appalling double standards. And one way it was manifested, I still remember, in January when the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, ruled that it was plausible that Israel is committing genocide. Detailing in facts and quotes and, all the proof, documents and deliberations. You know what the United States said? It's meritless, it's without basis. In a very condescending manner. And after the ruling of the ICJ, the world did nothing. And within a day or two, Israel alleged only that 12 UNRWA members took part in October 7th, and immediately all the countries, 12 countries led by the United States, stopped funding UNRWA. The level of hypocrisy is appalling, and the racism behind it is even more shocking. So my second message is that the American church is complicit. And I hope you get it. The American church is complicit. And I say this for several reasons. First, it's because theology played and continues to play a role. So let me believe the whole idea of a land without people, which is associated with Zionism. Did you know that Christian Zionists said this before Jewish Zionists? And by the way, here are sometimes little known facts. Christian Zionism predates modern Jewish Zionism and outnumbers Jewish Zionism. And they talked about our land as a land without people. This is when we were erased. This is when this genocide started. How many times we've heard in church circles, and sometimes in mainline progressive church circles, not just the evangelicals, Jews returned to their land. Their land, they call it. By saying so, you make me the Palestinian as if I am the stranger. I am the invader. You turn the indigenous Palestinian who've been living in the land for generations, all of a sudden because Jews are returning to their land. Am I occupying someone else's land? This is what we were forced to hear for years. that God gave this land to the Jewish people. Colonialism needed a theology. The Bible was weaponized. And this belief was imposed on the Palestinians. And I hope people understand what you are telling us, the idea that God gave this land to the Jewish. You're trying to impose your own theological and religious beliefs on a whole group of people. And by the way, the people who are doing this, imposing their religion on us, are the same people who argue for religious freedoms and the same people who go against, religious fundamentalism. And that's why I've been saying, are you listening to yourselves? Seriously, I'm asking this question. When you impose this belief on the Palestinians, are you listening to yourself? How can I carry a conversation with you when your side of the argument is, well, God told me so? Or, this is mine, this is yours. No, actually God gave it to them. How can I carry a conversation? Show me one other context in which the reference point to a dispute is a religious text rather than the international law or human rights. Why is it that only in Palestine the international law is ignored and we go to a religious text based on our own interpretation to whom God gave the land, and somehow the entire Palestinian people should accept that God gave this land to a certain people? That's why I say, are you really listening to yourself when you say these things? And the sad irony is that in Palestine, human rights are abused using the very same religious texts that were supposed to protect human rights. So theology, the Bible has been weaponized to justify colonialism, then apartheid, and I would even say now a genocide. In the introduction, it was mentioned that this is the anniversary of the second atomic bomb. I think both atomic bombs shouldn't have been used, not just the first one. And did you know that a congressman, actually said we should bomb Gaza with an atomic bomb? And he cited Hiroshima and Nagasaki as actually good examples. We should get it fast with, I think he said. And you know what the sad reality is? And I have to say it, is that this guy was a pastor. And he studied in some of the most prestigious evangelical seminaries. And somehow he thinks Nagasaki and Hiroshima are good examples and thinks we should do the same with Gaza and get it done with quickly. Where is the humanity? And then I ask, where is Jesus in all of this? The way the Bible was used even to weaponize, to justify this genocide was so heartbreaking to us as Palestinians, and particularly as Palestinian Christians. Theology played a role, and then you come and tell us, well, doesn't the Bible say this, or doesn't the Bible say that? And again, I want to say, are you listening to yourselves? Because if the Bible is teaching me or is promoting the concept of a racist God, I don't want this. Christian Zionism in its essence teach the concept of a racist God. A God who favors a certain nationality, a God of supremacy, a God who favors people based on their nationality or even DNA. And then you want to tell me, let's study the Bible? Really? A colonial God who does not mind about ethnically cleansing people to give room for new ones? And you want to convince me that this is the same God revealed in Jesus in the Bible? Jesus, who was the embodiment of compassion, of love and mercy and forgiveness? And now you want to tell me that this is a God of a genocide? And you know what's really interesting? I am in a country that knows something or two about the Bible being weaponized to justify settler colonialism and ethnically cleansing indigenous communities. Should we be surprised that the United States and Israel are allies? You know, one of the things that I marvel is how when American politicians visit Jerusalem or meet Israeli politicians, you know, one of the things they always keep repeating is that we stand with Israel because your cause is our cause, and then they say we stand with Israel because we share the same values. And you know, in their mind they say we share the same values, those of democracy. And by the way, sorry I keep distracting myself. When you say Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, do you know how insulting that is to Palestinians? Israel is an apartheid state. Call it for what it is. Calling Israel the only democracy in the Middle East is either ignorant or racist. I'm sorry. And then you want to tell us, we share the same values with Israel, meaning democracy, and inside me, what I say? Amen. You share the same value of settler colonialism and ethnically cleansing the indigenous communities. It makes sense. But as a Christian, I'm really shocked and sad to see the Bible continuously being weaponized for oppression and injustice. Slavery, apartheid. I was in South Africa in May. I've learned a lot from the wisdom of our siblings there. They have a lot to teach the world, believe me. I spent time with them. I spoke in churches and seminaries. And they would tell me, well, you're speaking from the pulpit from which the first sermon on apartheid was preached. You're going to the seminary from which the first books and theology of apartheid was written. And I ask myself, how does anybody read the Bible and conclude apartheid? Seriously, how? In the same way we ask ourselves today as Palestinians, how does anybody read the Bible and conclude Christian Zionism? Someone once said, I think, God has created us in his own image, and since then we've been returning the favor. And I think this is what's happening. We reflect our own prejudice and supremacy on the nature of God. This is what's happening. And when I come to the States to call out the church for being complicit, I hope you understand I'm not only calling Christian Zionism in its fundamentalist or evangelical manifestation, that theology of power. Because if this war taught us anything, is that many in the so-called liberal mainline denominations were also complicit in this war. They repeated arguments that Israel has the sacred right to defend itself. So many church statements said that, mainline church. Some have used the example of the just war theory to promote this war. The just war theory, which I hope you understand what you're saying, because if you use the just war theory, you make the killing of 16,000 children the justice of God. And by the way, the self-defense, how is the colonizer defending itself from the colonized? Can anybody tell me? This is not the Jesus way. And then there were those who were silent, who told us in their silence, which was a very loud silence, that God does not care. And there is a reason why we need to call out, many reasons why we need to call out this silence. Because this silence is an indication of approval, especially when theology is being used, and especially when you know that it's your tax money that's funding this war, and you're silent, that means you approve. If you're okay with the way your politicians, the ones you elected, vote in the Congress to continue this war, and you're silent, that means you're okay. Silence is complicity. And when we as Christians are silent in the face of injustice, we lose our credibility. So it's not just the Christian Zionists, but it's those who were silent, and it's also the sin of apathy that we need to call out. The sin of apathy. I was recently challenged reading the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. It's a story Jesus told about those who go to heaven and those go to hell, and we read it and we, speculate about the nature and heaven and hell. And for many times I read the story and asked myself, what was the sin of the rich man? Because it's never mentioned. What merited that he goes to hell according to the story that Jesus said? Until I paid attention to a very simple detail in the parable, which says that Lazarus lied at the gate of the rich man. Meaning that rich man would see Lazarus every day coming in and out. he would see suffering in front of his doorstep and do nothing. His sin was apathy. This is really an indictment against all people of faith who claim to worship God and continue to debate dogma and doctrine, yet do not care about those in need of our care, do not care about those who are suffering from injustice. So silence is approval, silence is complicity. And another thing I've been troubled with throughout the silence is this concept of a harmless church, a comfortable church, a church that cares about avoiding controversy more than it cares about justice and the oppressed. And this is why many churches were silent. They didn't want to ruffle some feathers, right? They didn't want to bother getting into a heated conversation. And this is why I'm grateful I'm here. Not all churches open their door to me, honestly, because they want to avoid controversy. Imagine if Jesus walked on earth avoiding controversy. My goodness. Everything he said, everything he touched, everywhere he go, he was creating controversy to challenge our apathy, our prejudice, and our lack of concern for people. It's a sin of apathy. So here is my message to the church today. This is a kairos moment. This is a kairos moment. By that I mean a moment that demands a response. It is a time in which the faithful need to have discernment about the unfolding drama of history and then act prophetically. These are truly critical times we live in. And I believe also that as a kairos moment, this is what I call you are the person moment. Allow me to explain. There is a story in 1 Samuel 12 in our biblical tradition when the prophet Nathan confronted David. It's a very important story that teaches us something about what it means to be prophetic and what it means to speak truth to power. This story happened when King Nathan had to confront, the prophet Nathan had to confront King David with his sin of greed, adultery, murder, exploiting the vulnerable, and taking what is not his own. David did all these things. To do so, Nathan gave a story with a clear message followed by a strong conclusion. So let me read the story. The Lord sent Nathan to David, and he came to him and said to him, here's the story. There were two men in a certain city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing but one little lamb that he had bought. The poor man brought it up, grew it up with him and with his children. It used to eat of his meager fare and drink from his cup and lie in his bosom. And it was like a daughter to him. Now there came a traveler to the rich man. And what does he do? He was loath to take one of his own flock or herd to prepare for the wayfarer who had come to him. Instead, he took the poor man's lamb and prepared that for the guest who had come to him. The Bible says actually that David was angry and greatly kindled against the man. He said to Nathan, "As the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. He shall restore the lamb fourfold because he did this thing and because he had no pity." And then came Nathan's response, which was so profound, so courageous, and so prophetic. A response that is so much needed today. Nathan looked at David and said, "You are the person. You are the man." This was Nathan's challenge to the empire of his time. And it took courage to speak to your own empire. But he had to speak truth to power. He had to challenge and uncover the exploitation of the vulnerable, even if it meant challenging his own king, challenging his own empire. This was indeed Nathan's kairos moment. And I believe that what's happening in Gaza and Palestine today is a kairos moment to the church and to our humanity that demands a similar prophetic courage. This is a you are the person moment, and we need to know where you stand. Friends, this is not the time for diplomacy. Nathan was smart and wise, but not diplomatic. He spoke truth to power. He called it for what it is. He did not, by the way, try the middle ground. He did not try to rationalize the position of David. Well, you see, he was lonely maybe, or something like that. He did not try to rationalize the position of the rich man, why he took that of the poor. He just called it for what it is. And we need to do the same. We need courage to speak up. We need integrity and morality more than anything, especially in politics and the church. And you know when I say this, because I have so many meetings over the years, but especially in the last 10 months, with church leaders and politicians. And you know what they tell me? They say one thing behind closed doors and another in public. And many times they tell me, we wish we could say this in public. Well, you can, but you chose not to. And this is the problem. They chose not to because they lack the courage, they lack the integrity. This is why I say this is a kairos moment. This is a moment in which we need to speak up. We can no longer resort to the old ways. We need to confess our complicity as Christians in what's happening, the complicity of the church. And we need to reverse course. And I would suggest that the first thing we need to do is call things by name. Enough is enough of the old diplomatic ways that lead us to nowhere. Enough of the vague statements that say nothing. Church statements that look at this side, look at that side, and then pray for peace. And by the way, this is not the time to lecture us or talk to us as Palestinians about peace and reconciliation. Let us call things by their name, beginning with the reality on the ground, beginning with what Zionism is. Let's address Zionism for what it truly is. Zionism is an ideology of supremacy. Zionism is racism. Zionism was built on the premise of creating a homeland for the Jewish people on someone else's land. As such, Zionism by definition necessitates the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, the colonization of Palestine. Zionism has not only ethnically cleansed Palestine, but those who remained in the land are subjected to a brutal system of apartheid. So let's call Zionism for what it truly is. And for those who say we are Christian Zionists, I wonder, can you really put the word Christian before colonialism, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid? It's as simple as that. And by the way, I would argue, can you even put the word Jewish before that? And I love the simplicity and authenticity and courage of Jewish Voice for Peace, who claim who state clearly in their position, Jewish Voice for Peace is guided by a vision of justice, equality, and freedom for all people. Therefore, we unequivocally oppose Zionism because it is the counter to those ideals. Straightforward. We stand, they say, for justice, equality, and freedom. That's why we oppose Zionism, because it's the antithesis of these. I wish we used this simplicity and courage as Christians as well. So let's call Zionism for what it truly is. And second, please stop talking about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. There is no conflict in Palestine. It's not a conflict. It's not a conflict where there are two sides fighting. What we have in Palestine is oppression, is apartheid. You know how insulting it is when someone is stepping literally with his boot on your neck and you're lecturing that person about peace and conflict resolution. And maybe that's precisely the problem. We've been trying to solve a conflict when in fact there is no conflict. What we need to talk about is how do we dismantle apartheid in Palestine. This is what we need to talk about. And this is precisely my call to faith leaders today. I'm so encouraged, by the way, throughout this tour to see Christian Jews and Muslims coming together, creating new alliances, grassroots alliances, coming together. By the way, not coming together for interfaith dialogue. I don't want that where, we sing Kumbaya and when we leave. They're coming together to stand in solidarity and to say no to injustice, no to apartheid. This is the kind of alliances we need to create. And together we can. Together we can. I've been saying this is not a religious conflict, but every people of faith, every faith leader must come and say, we do not accept this. So it is indeed, it's encouraging. It's one sign of hope in this very dark world to see grassroots movements united with people of different faiths, different faiths, different traditions. And I think this is the way forward. And I want to say to faith leaders in particular, your voices must be heard. This is a kairos moment. And let me address this precisely why. One of the things I've been saying even before the war, that Israel continues to do what it does because they simply can. No one is holding them accountable, and they don't have to pay for this. The occupation and enforcing apartheid is costly. And you know that Israel cannot continue with apartheid and occupation of Palestine if it wasn't for your money, for your support. Not support, sorry, your tax money. Do you know what I mean? And if people of faith do not hold their government accountable for the way they spend their money, your money, something is wrong. You have to speak up about the way your money is spent. Because money right now coming from your pockets is invested in apartheid and in a genocide. And if you're not speaking up, I don't know who will. So you need to speak up because Israel relies on funding. And second, we need to speak up because Israeli politicians and leaders know they can get away with everything. I see all of this talk about the as they call them, fringe radicals, settlers in the West Bank. And now America has revoked the visa, I think, of 3 and 4. Oh, my goodness. Is this a joke? We need to hold the government that funds them and sends the military to protect them accountable. This is what we need to do. War crimes are being committed. Are we going to hold those who commit war crimes accountable? And if people of faith do not demand holding people who commit war crimes accountable, I don't know who will. So this is my message to faith leaders. Step up your game. Come together. Unite. Demand accountability. Demand accountability. And please, let us treat Israel for what it is, an apartheid state. How is Netanyahu celebrated in the Congress as a hero? How? We're grateful that a good number of congressmen and women boycotted that. We're grateful. We need to work on more and not allow AIPAC to continue to take them one at a time. People of faith, leaders of faith, hold those you elect accountable. Let them hear your voices. Hold your government accountable for how they spend their money and demand answers, demand change, and demand accountability. People of faith, it's time that you lead. Let me conclude. In December, I declared that Gaza has become the moral compass of our world. And I repeat this today, Gaza is indeed the moral compass of our world. It has divided on our world, and it's a good thing. It has divided our world not on the basis of religion or ethnicity or nationality, but it has divided on our world. It has divided our world on the basis of ethics and morality. And we need to know where you stand. We need to know where you stand from the killing of 16,000 children. You need to tell us where you stand. And we need to know where you stand from the whole situation in Palestine, because it's as simple as this. You either stand with justice and humanity or you stand with apartheid. It's as simple as that. You can no longer try to play the middle ground, in which we pray for peace and wish everyone well. And we hide behind these calls for peace, in the same way many politicians hide behind the call for a two-state solution. Gaza has become the moral compass of the world, and we need to act because it's our collective humanity that is at stake. If we as a humanity are okay with the genocide being normalized under the watch of the whole world, being broadcasted live, then something is seriously wrong with our humanity. We can't be okay with that. And for my fellow Christian siblings, it's precisely the credibility of our Christian witness that is at stake when we are silent in the face of a genocide funded by our own money and a genocide promoted by theology from our own churches. We can't be silent. We can't be silent. Where is the church? Is a question many are asking. Where is the church? And you know, in difficult times, people ask, where is God? And it's indeed an important question. But this is not the kind of catastrophe of an earthquake or a volcano in which we need to ask, where is God? The true answer to this question right now is, where are the good people to stop this? You know, I've learned this in a very difficult way. When some years ago, I visited for the first time the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. And I'm not telling this story to compare suffering or to compare, as some would try to. I visited the museum with an Israeli friend who explained the reality, the history, and how they feel about it. And I was shocked, I was appalled. It's really horrifying. And in my naivety as an activist Christian in my 20s, do you know what the question I kept asking myself the whole time? It wasn't where was God. The whole time I kept asking him and myself, where was the church? What did Christians say or do about this? Did they try to stop this? I was really troubled by the question, where was the church? And I say in my naivety because later when I studied the history, I discovered that the church was actually complicit in this horrific genocide, the Holocaust of 6 million Jews. Where was the church is a question we always need to ask when there is suffering in the world. And friends, today when I ask where was the church, I want to see the church where it belongs, in the streets, with the marginalized, with people who are suffering. This is where the church belongs. The church is in those creating and conducting small vigils. The church is in those who are taking part in interfaith gatherings with people of different faiths and no faith to stop this genocide. The church is in those demonstrating. This is where the church needs to be available. And you know, we haven't talked much yet about what the students in universities are doing. Amazing work. Keep going. And by the way, about the students, people keep asking me about November and the elections, and I say, I'll pray for you for the choices you have. But what will happen in the States in September is far more important than what will happen in November. The students and what they will do when the semester begins in the fall is far more important what the politicians in DC will do. And my message to faith leaders, and my message as a pastor to Christian leaders, please support, protect, and give comfort to those students. Do you know how many of them, especially those from Palestinian descent, are going through difficult times? They're traumatized by what's happening in Palestine. They're really broken. And instead, they are met with violence or with politicians calling them anti-Semites, despite the fact that many Jewish students are leading these protests. We know how it is, how anti-Semitism is weaponized. I really hope that faith leaders and that the church steps in to be with those who are thirsty for justice and righteousness. Those students who have become the moral integrity of this country. Students have always been on the right side of history, let's remember that. I hope the church really supports them and is present with them and all people of faith as well. Where was the church is an important and critical question. And when I say these are kairos moments, dare I remind myself that God will judge all of us with his justice on all of this. We Christians don't like to talk much about judgment, right? Let's face it. Let's be honest about it. But I believe sometimes we really do. And one of the passages that have guided me, challenged me, comforted me actually throughout this period is the one in Matthew 25. Matthew 25, thank you. For those who don't know. Matthew 25 is a passage in which Jesus talks about Judgment Day. And he says precisely this is the basis of which God will judge humanity. It's not your religion, by the way, and for Christians, it's not your denomination. God will judge humanity. God will judge us based on how we treated the least of these. Who are the least of these? The hungry, the thirsty, those who needed clothes, the strangers, the prisoners. In other words, victims of oppression, victims of structures of injustice. And Jesus said, you will be judged based on how you treated them. Did you bring them food? Did you bring them cover? Did you visit them in their imprisonment? And it's not only that. Jesus says, you will be judged on whether you've seen the image of Jesus in every one of the least of these. He said, I was thirsty and you gave me water. Whatever you have done to the least of these, you have done to me. And by the way, I always say, this is one of the rare moments you hear me say this to our evangelical friends. I hope you read this passage literally. Don't justify it. Don't theologize it. Take it for what it is. Take it seriously. It's about the judgment of God. Amen. Micah 6. Do we see the image of Jesus in the children of Gaza? This is my question. In Christmas, when we were about to celebrate Christmas, we couldn't celebrate Christmas. And one of the things that kept troubling us is how the world continued to justify and rationalize the killing of our children. And primarily guided by this passage, I said, we have to see the image of Jesus in every child pulled from under the rubble. This is why we had Jesus under the rubble. This is how we understand the message of the gospel, of God's solidarity with us in times of pain and need and suffering. This is the incarnation. This is what God became one of us. He was born with the occupied. He became one of us, especially in times of challenges, difficulties, and tribulations. Jesus under the rubble was our response to the apathy of the world, was our response to the indifference of politicians and, in some instances, church leaders who failed to speak truth to power, who failed to see the image of Jesus in every victim of war, and especially those children in Gaza pulled from under the rubble. Jesus under the rubble is God's solidarity with the marginalized, with the oppressed, with those who are suffering. And my friends, God's solidarity must become our solidarity. If God is in solidarity with those who are marginalized, so are we to be in solidarity with those who are marginalized. This is our calling. It is time to rise. It is time to act. So with one voice and one commitment, let us commit for justice. Let us commit ourselves for a ceasefire in Gaza. May justice reign and righteousness fill the world like water fill the seas. Thank you.
What a wonderful segue into what I'm about to say. As you came in, I hope you were able to receive a copy of the brochure of Friends of Sabeel North America, and I know Brother Joe already talked a little bit about that. If you're interested in participating with Friends of Sabeel North America, please contact us either by the email address that's on there or by the snail mail address. And we would love to have you participate with other events that we're doing here with Friends of Sabeel. But more importantly, what I wanted to try to bring your attention to is this insert that we put in here, which of course has a little bit of a bio of our speaker tonight, who we are so grateful for the message that he brought. It also has, and I need to say this as a member of FOSNA, it has an opportunity for you, if you haven't already, to make a donation here using the QR code here, or you can make a donation out at one of the baskets that's out on the table here as we depart. And by the way, just as a sense, when we are done here, there are coffee and soft drinks outside, there are cookies and other goodies. And I encourage you to continue having conversations with friends, new and old out there. We do need to vacate this room by a certain time, but we can continue outside as long as necessary. And we will let our guest go at some point here this evening, because he still has about an hour's drive to where he's staying tonight, and he and his family would like to get some sleep. By the way, I'd like to acknowledge his family. I know they're here. I don't see them right immediately here. But if the Isaac family would just stand and be acknowledged here. Where are they? There they are. They, of course, have heard this message before. And are actually here to try to get a little bit of vacation time in. So we were able to take them down to the pier at Santa Monica today and to enjoy some of the waters while Munter was off speaking with a bunch of teachers and others at Cal Lutheran University. I also wanted to draw your attention to the back of that sheet here, because there are some important things. We were talking just here about a call to action. And we had some people spontaneously saying "Free Palestine" in several languages here. I wanted to break, there are several ceasefire vigils if you are here in the Pasadena or Eastern Valley area here that you may want to participate in. They're on various nights. You could be busy just about every night of the week at one of these vigils. So I want to draw your attention to this. And if you aren't in this area, if you've made a longer distance trip, and I know there's someone here who came from Phoenix just to hear this program, and another person who came from Canada, from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. So I recognize, of course, that you may not be that far away, but there are vigils like these. These are just examples. And with a little bit of digging, you can find one of these vigils and join in. It's not necessarily going to be something from FOSNA. It may be a community group. I know our group here in Pasadena, we have been meeting every Monday night since about 2 weeks after October 7th in front of Judy Chu's office. to give a message that ceasefire now is important. And you know what? She's hearing us because, for example, she just signed on as a co-sponsor for H.R. 1102, which you can read about down here at the bottom, which would restore emergency funds to UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Gaza. This is so important because UNRWA is really the only organization that has the capacity, both in terms of manpower and, sorry about the sexist language, in people power, and also in terms of funding that they used to be able to have from multiple governments around the world. You and I cannot make up the gap, no matter how much we may want to try. And it is our responsibility to get our government off its backside and to fund UNRWA again. So there is thank you. There is a draft script here, and I encourage you, whether or not your Congresswoman is Judy Chu, as mine is, or someone else, that you find out who that person is and that you encourage them. Find out, first of all, if they have already co-sponsored. There are some 50 co-sponsors already on this bill, mostly Democrats, so if you live in a Republican district, you're probably pretty sure that there isn't anyone who's taken care of that. But whatever we might do, even with our Democratic senators here, and by the way, this is a House bill, so there needs to be a Senate companion bill to this as well. So contact your senators and use this same script, asking them not to endorse H.R. 1102, because that will do no good, but to introduce a bill similar to H.R. 1102. It could be identical to it, and get this passed on both the House and the Senate so we can restore funding to UNRWA. This is the type of call to action. This is just one example, but this is the type of call to action we're asking people to do here tonight. Now comes a little bit of a tricky part here of our program, because for the next 20 minutes or so at least, we're going to try and have a little bit more of a conversation, a little bit more of a dialogue, which means that I and a friend, Elizabeth Eilers, are going to come out here with microphones, and it's important that if you have a question, that you be able to say it succinctly and allow for time for people to address, or if you must make a comment, and I realize that there's a lot of emotions out here right now, that you keep that to 30 seconds or under. Okay, so start thinking about what you might want to say, either as a question or a comment, and Elizabeth, if you'll join me up here with a couple of microphones, we'll try and do this. Have a question or comment they want to make? Brief comment. Okay, there's one right by you there.
Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace. Thank you so much for being here. As a Palestinian from Gaza, I am beyond grateful for you and for your position and what you're saying. I will make it brief. We are blessed here in this community in Pasadena that we have a coalition of people of different faith where, as Randy mentioned, we come every Monday and we stand in solidarity, but we demand action. So my question to you, it is tiring to move from one church to church so that people can hear. And I am willing and volunteering myself to try to have a global virtual conference. Would you be willing to be part of that virtual conference so that everybody in the world, regardless of their faith, would hear your message?
Thank you. أهل غزة على راسنا. Those who know me know that I kill myself on webinars and I overwork myself. I'm always, actually most of my friends tell me I should learn to say no, but I will honor any serious and especially interfaith commitment right now. I think we have to prioritize interfaith commitment. And I want to encourage all of us that many times we think of wanting to do big things. How can we reach to every church? But let's be real, we can change one church at a time, one family at a time. Every little effort matters. And I think sometimes we're too hard on ourselves thinking, how do we go to all churches? But I think it's a marathon. It's going to take so long. And we can't get tired or weary. And if there is an opportunity for something bigger, global, then yes, by all means. But let's not be distracted from the fact that most real big things that make an impact begin small. So what you're doing, whether here in Pasadena or many other places, truly matters. Many of you maybe have been tirelessly sending emails and letters. It matters. It's going to make a difference. So the answer is yes, but let's also commit ourselves to the small grassroots initiatives and events and the things that we're doing, because we need to build one at a time until we reach the bigger event.
Hello, my name is Shannon Thomas. Thank you so much for being here and speaking with us tonight. I'm curious, as we are watching the horrors in Gaza live, it also strikes me that, you spoke a little bit about administrative detention, but the fate of Palestinians in the West Bank and in 1948, Palestine, are also suffering. What does solidarity between the various Palestinian regions look like right now? And how can we be of support to people in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in Israel?
And in the diaspora, and in the refugee camps, and we're one people. We are really one people, and part of the empire's strategy is to defragment us. And what you said, right now in Palestine, Palestinians hold 4 different ID cards. There's the East Jerusalemite, there are those in the state of Israel, there are West Bank, and there's Gaza. We're more unified than ever, I think. It's our leadership that's still not unified, and we need to call them out for this. But as people, we are unified. And you also touch on what's happening in the West Bank. The West Bank is literally becoming unlivable right now. It's hard to go from one place to the other. It's really hard. A friend of mine today just shared, he was hit by settlers on the road from Jericho to Ramallah. We have to think twice before we make any trip from one place to the other right now in the West Bank. And the future on this rate, there's nowhere to build, there's no water. It's a clear plan to push us out. And what's the interesting part is that they are no longer hiding their intentions. They're telling us what they want to do. They're telling us that this is what we are about to do. We're unified, and I think also to see wherever I go, I had the privilege of going to London, to South Africa, and now to the States, and to see Palestinians, Jordan, always unified, always showing to events, is a sign of our unity as a people. And it's a sign that we have not forgotten who we are, even those in diaspora. Even the refugees have not given up on their, speaking of sacred rights, sacred right of return.
It's on.
Okay, I don't have like a global importance thing to say, but I just kind of want to give testimony for what Jesus has done in many of us, some of us evangelicals who had no idea of the injustice going on in Palestine. I've sat in churches for many decades, just kind of, they're the bad people, Israel's the good people. But when October 7th happened, something happened where the Lord almost sent kind of like an awakening or a revival to those of us who are thirsting and yearning for righteousness. So don't despair. People are starting to see, even dead people like me have risen. And saw the reality of what's going on. I could have preached the same lecture you preached today. I agree with everything you said. I'm saying that because we know, we pray daily, my husband and I, and we know others who pray daily. We lose friends over it, we lose community over it, but it's okay because this is God's work. And he hears those people who are crying out to him, those children, those mothers, those fathers. So just the encouragement that people are waking up, as small a number as it is. So Amen. Bless you.
Amen.
Thank you so very much for being here with us. May God bless you in your work. You will be in my prayers and those of our community at Pasadena Presbyterian Church. As you know, our General Assembly did come out with a very strong statement in support of ceasefire, and just the thought that as you were speaking, I was beginning to think about Bonhoeffer when he returned to Germany after having been safe in England. And I certainly hope that your faith is much greater, or your fate will be much greater than his. But by the same token, I feel so ashamed that I can't go back with you and stand with you. May God bless you so very, very much. Amen.
Thank you.
Dr. Isaac, thank you very much for coming out here. My name is Stan. My question for you is, if Catholic and Orthodox Christian leaders and audiences have been as responsive to your message, and if you have presented the same arguments or different arguments to them?
I'm sure there are Catholics and Orthodox here, right? I no longer target as if, I'm speaking to certain group of people or certain denominations. I think I'm speaking to all of us. In this trip, I've seen, a group of Catholics, I think in Pittsburgh or Chicago, who Catholics for Palestine. It's a small group. They're meeting, they're increasing, they're growing. In New Jersey, I'm speaking in an Orthodox church. In Atlanta, believe it or not, I'm speaking in a Southern Baptist church. Things are changing. And I think oftentimes we feel that change comes when the leadership speaks or acts, but Christianity, the church is the people, is the grassroots, is the communities, it's us speaking. And we don't always have to think that we want a certain religious figure to speak so that it makes a difference. The real change will come when the people demand change on the ground, especially bringing to my message when you demand change from your, I don't think a certain congressman will vote in a certain way if a bishop says something, but he will vote in a certain way if he receives, or if he, those who vote for him demand that you vote in a certain way for Palestine. This is what makes a difference. So believe me, everywhere I go, this trip has been the most diverse group of people who come to listen to me than I have ever witnessed all my life. Everywhere I go, there are Jews, Muslims, Christians, and Christians from all traditions, Sikh, atheists. It's amazing. And I think this is the real work that we need to focus on, rather than always thinking, did this religious figure speak or did that religious figure speak?
Reverend Isaac, thank you for speaking and coming to the United States to speak to us. I actually have a political question to ask you. There was a convening of all those different sections, organizations, political parties, Palestinians in China. And I wanted to know if you could speak to that, or if there's anything you can share, because there's no information about that here in the United States.
I'll believe it when I see it. We've been hearing about calls for unity and meetings for unity, for 16 years now? How many times do they have to meet? I think with all honesty, they are bringing shame to their legacy as long as we are divided as Palestinians. And it is time we unite, if nothing for the honorable people of Gaza. It's time we unite. So we've heard many good things about that meeting. And then there was silence. That's why I say I will believe it when I see it.
Just thank you so much for your presentation. It was wonderful. And just as a support to what you are saying, I'm a Catholic priest. And when this Gaza thing came up, the Archbishop asked all the parishes to collect money, and we did. So the Catholic really played a part there. However, I do have a question. My question is, what the efforts of the different states in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Jordan, all those states, Egypt, what effort are they making towards this problem? What solutions are they bringing forward to solve this problem?
They could definitely do more, let's put it this way. And I'm being generous. For sure, the Palestinian people in particular, feel that other Arab countries should do more. That's not a reflection on what the people think. So demonstrations in the Arab world have been massive in terms of numbers. Yet we know that politics in the Middle East is very much, everybody wants to keep a certain balance, and leaders always think of how to protect what's in the best interest of their own countries. A lot of the things that have been done are debated. For example, Egypt's insistence on closing the border, yet while allowing some to give money and let people give, is shameful. Yet that decision kept, protected, ethnic cleansing from taking place, yet maybe at the cost of many, many losing their lives. So a lot could be debated about Egypt's role. Having said everything, before going, without going to details about what each country could do, and by the way, the Gulf countries, within what they can, they're giving, but at the same time, let's not forget their role and Qatar's role, for example. It's complicated. However, and I'm not taking the blame, or I'm not trying to make them innocent. Most of them, coordinate everything with the United States. It's the United States that makes most of the shots. Of course, with the exception of maybe Syria. So that's the real equation in the Middle East. They rely on support from the United States, financial support, political support, and they offered to accept the two-state solution many times. That's, their stated position. But ultimately, what do we ask from them? Do we want them to wage war? Is this what we're asking? Maybe they could withhold oil, maybe. Stop some trades. Yes, there is things that could be done, but at the end of the day, believe me, guys, real change begins here. Real change begins here.
Thank you so much for being here, for speaking. You have reached the world, and thank you for answering such a big call. This will be a personal question. I apologize for your time, but my name is Amani Ishaq, and I am of the diaspora, and I don't know about that side of my family. I don't know where my last name comes from. I'm from Aboud. Can you tell me anything about it? Please. I don't know.
Aboud. I'm from Beit Sahour, Ishaq, Beit Sahour. Amani, you have an American passport. you should come and visit. It's possible. And if you're from Aboud, you should come and visit Aboud. I have friends in Aboud I can introduce you to. They know the history of the town, the families, and you will find out about your ancestors, but you have to go through this journey yourself. And I'm challenging you to come and visit, and I'm warning you it's going to impact your life dramatically. But you should do it. And I will make sure you meet my friends from Aboud, and I will make sure they help you.
Good evening, Reverend Isaac. My name is Lena Platt. I'm with the Schiller Institute. And I wondered if you know that there is an effort already started that will really pick up steam in September when the UN General Assembly comes in. And the effort is to override the veto at the Security Council on the ceasefires by invoking UN Resolution 377, in which they can move it out of the Security Council because they can't decide, and get the much larger and diverse, primarily global South nations to vote on it. I spent most of yesterday visiting a number of consulates in Los Angeles, urging their representatives to do that. And so I wondered if you knew about that, and I'd like to give you a couple of things on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I am aware of that effort. And as I said to those who shared this with me, I think in another place, every initiative works. Everything helps. And that could make a difference. So by all means, I would support that.
Hi, I'm John Hyde. I'm a member of All Saints here as well. And I go out on the street on Mondays and part of the vigil. And I am not somebody who really enjoys standing there, watching cars go by, saying, remember that this is a genocide and how horrible it is. But I think really the most important thing that we as individuals can do, each one of us, even the people who are here have never been to a protest or a vigil before and feel like, well, what can I do? It's really important that we upset the trend that we are in right now to normalize genocide, especially of these children. We really need you out on the street there, and I hope you will show up. Thank you.
"527 South Lake is here in Pasadena. That's Judy Chu's office at that location. This is the most difficult part of the program for me because I'm going to have to draw it to an end. And so for those of you who didn't get a chance to answer, to get your questions answered or make a comment, I encourage you to join us outside here in the courtyard area. We have some refreshments there. We will have some opportunity to interact with each other. And for those of you who are just dying for a second shot at the apple here, I just wanted to bring to your attention that there is a program that has been added on tomorrow. The venue is called Strategy and Soul at 3546 West Martin Luther King Drive. Munter will be speaking there between 9 and 11 in a program called Silence is Complicity to Genocide. So I encourage you to attend. Kelvin Sauls, are you here still? There he is. He's the one who coordinated and organized this, and he is very active, especially in the work in South Central LA and in the West Adams area. And so I encourage you to take part in that tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. That's unfortunately one of the reasons why we have to draw this to a close. We do need to allow Father Munter to be able to get some sleep. So I think this will be an appropriate time to once again show our appreciation for his message. So we'll see you out on the lawn. Thank you.